Oh, wait, and not to mention too, the excuse for the wartime footing of the conversion of our auto industries and all those fabrication plants over into military use. So, how can they convince you that we need to turn our automotive industry into a weapons manufacturing industry?
Right. And you're like, well, how could that go wrong? Well, the Federal Communications Commission scrapped limit on broadcast TV ownership, which means there'll be even more of a streamlining of the AI media companies and the television broadcasters. So you're going to get more and more of a unified message coming out of the ministries of truth around the world.
Gasoline and diesel right now, as you know it, are really artificially being suppressed, but wait until after the midterms, they're going to run. They want to keep it low for the midterms. And after that, election's over, the real price is going to start to hit you, along with the real price of the grains and the real price of your plastics and the real price of everything is going to hit all in once. And welcome to the Civilization Cycle Podcast, a live show every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, streaming off of Rumble, the Civilization Cycle Podcast channel.
And, I wanted to touch on some ideas there. You were talking about the lead paint and all that stuff. A lot of people, including myself, thought, hey, that is weird that they took out all the lead paint and then, all of a sudden moved into this new technological age of Wi-Fi and wireless connection and wireless spying, microwave spying, and all of these other things. But, I thought it was more about that at first, but now I realize that was just, again, small potatoes. The bigger picture is what we were talking about on our last show, where they roll up with the truck and scan through your home. Now, they couldn't have did that if all your walls had, 3 layers thick of old lead paint because, you just paint over the old paint. You paint it over. They couldn't have did that as easily, but now they can. And think about that too. They've moved over to all these plastics to circle around about the copper tubing and the plastic tubing. Those are all things that would be blocking the view, obstructing the scan. So now the modern homes are basically, balsa wood, 2x4s, different kinds of paneling and insulation and stuff. But there's not too much hardcore stuff to stop any kind of scan. It's basically a hollow structure. The same reason it flies away when you get a tornado. That it's a whole plethora of things that they might not have been able to do if people continue to build and maintain their homes in the way that they used to. Just think about the old big shingles on the house that everybody used to use, the asbestos paneling and shingles. They told everybody that's super poison, and I'm sure the kind that they use for insulation is bad. But what about those old solid panels that they used to cover the roofs with? And they even had asbestos siding panels for the outside of buildings and stuff. You remember all that stuff? And it would last like forever. Matter of fact, as working for the siding company, I removed a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, when I was looking at some property in East Tennessee, a couple pieces that I looked at had some really old homes on them that were, semi-collapsed, and nobody, people moved out 30, 40 years ago and never maintained it. They had these cedar shingles for the siding. They were all still good. We're worth tens of thousands of dollars at today's price when, you're paying big money, $15, $20. I mean, the things we're throwing away and getting rid of, then you have to buy it new. We have entered a very dangerous stage across the planet, specifically in America, where this AI entity, as it comes in, as the more and more of these things come forward and the more control that this thing has, you're going to be required to do more compliance, this, that, and there. You can see the track where this thing's going. At the end of it, though, if we do come into something like a social credit system that they have in China, I lived and worked in China for a few years, and I thought, as this system was coming in, it's impossible that they're going to get the 80-year-old grandmas in the countryside to get smartphones to be able to do all this garbage. And then even nobody ever used anything electronic in the countryside. They all had cash in the match. Everybody had cash. It was like a cash kingdom. You go there, you couldn't even use credit cards. Everything was cash. You either had cash or you couldn't travel. There was no such thing as like scanning cards out in the countryside in these more remote places. It was all cash. 73 miles off the coast of Antarctica, and water so clean they're virtually untouched by human pollution, lives a tiny organism that researchers believe may be one of the most powerful anti-inflammatory nutrients ever discovered. It's called krill. If you've been taking fish oil for heart, joint, or memory support, there's something you need to know. Research shows fish oil is 50% less absorbable than krill oil, because fish oils omega-3s are in triglyceride form, while krill oils are in phospholipid form, which is the same format your cell walls are made of. That means krill oil gets into your cells immediately. In head-to-head studies, krill oil outperformed fish oil at improving cholesterol, reducing inflammation, and easing joint pain. Native Path Antarctic krill oil is sourced from pristine Antarctic waters, contains the powerful antioxidant astaxanthin, and comes in a tiny soft gel, no fishy burps. For my special bundle offer plus free shipping, head to getkrill.com/adapt. That's GETKRILL.com/ADAPT. Try it risk-free with a 365-day money-back guarantee. Click on that link in the description box below. That's what made me so skeptical of the system they were talking about in China. I'm like, man, they're never going to do that. You got hundreds of millions of people that are they're all on cash. They don't have electronic devices. A quarter of the population is never going to get pulled into the system. Ha ha ha, the joke was on me. Everybody has a smartphone. There's no more cash, and everybody's in on the system. They were forced to, by applying the thumb screws to those family members that were outside the countryside living in the cities. You were the ones that were supposed to bring that system back to your family and convert them over to it. And you, the worker, you're in the city in Shanghai, you're in Beijing, you're in like Chengdu or Nanjing or somewhere, you're down in the Pearl River Delta, you're down in Shenzhen. You need to bring the money home and buy that for your grandparents. That's your duty as a Chinese citizen, is to buy the device, to take it to your grandparents, teach them how to use it. And that is your duty to do it. And if you do not, we will dock your social credit score. We will knock your points down for non-compliance in the system. That's how they did it. That, because these grandparents, those $1,000 phones, or, let's say $800 US, are you kidding me? That's so far out of the range of anybody to be able to buy that was living out in the countryside. I'm talking rural, remote, kind of like poor, very agrarian, poor society. It was super fun out there traveling, man. You walk through and they'd be like, dude, where are you from? You're like a space alien dropped in. It's cool. You speak Chinese, welcome, It was really cool. I love traveling in China, really remote. Cities were good, but remote travel in China was awesome. I mean, there was so amazing history that they hadn't destroyed yet, like the pyramids out past Xi'an and Yuanyang and going way out that way. There's all kind of ancient like megaliths and just underground cities and buried ruins. And it was archaeology, man. It is a dream to go over there and travel around. More remote spots, you could really just like climb on everything. There's no fences, you have to buy a ticket for anything. Like those kind of places. Unknowns on a map, unless you could read Chinese to see where the place is. And you got something and a glimpse about it. Those kind of places where, in my estimation, like it is going to be impossible to get that system there. Well, it is all encompassing. It's everywhere. So for our country, it's going to be so much easier because everybody's already there with their smart devices. It's not like you have to convince people to do it or get your, the sons and daughters working in New York or in Atlanta or somewhere, Savannah, to go get money to then take out to their rural grandparents to buy them a smartphone to get them on the system. Like they already got it. Like to implement the system in America is going to be way faster, but they need the cause and provocation to get people to flip the system. What is that going to be? Because we're going down there real quick. We're getting pushed that direction. Oh, and Ransom, my question for you was, with the concrete walls instead of, could the scanning radar see through the concrete walls versus lead paint walls?
Yes, you can absolutely scan through it pretty easily. I mean, you can use LiDAR, ground penetrating radar. There's other high frequency stuff you can use. Like they literally have a concrete X-ray radiography that basically just puts little images on film or whatever sensor you have hooked up to it on the opposite side. And it has a good resolution of all of the internal structures. You got electromagnetic induction that can scan through it, ultrasonic pulse echo, and on and on and on. I mean, there's just many different ways. And someone said, hey, this revolution can't happen if you don't have a phone. But guess what? Where we're going, you don't need phones, because soon you just won't, they won't need a phone to hook you into the system. Now, that has nothing to do with this article. However, I wanted to loop it around to when you were talking about this emergence of the AI and how it controls everything. Artificial intelligence used to design it, but don't worry, supposedly it won't, hurt you. However, they successfully got it to, fully functional there that replicates itself. What could go wrong, right? And, all of this is going to be used in conjunction with this, training that you got from the COVID era.
But it fits right into how many layers of this cake can we go to disrupt our world right now? That's just staggering.
Lots. We can go through layers. And if you think it's going to end anytime soon, you're really just kidding yourself, because, people are starting to try to make agreements around the control mechanism that basically initiated this conflict. Trump out of the New Deal to reopen the street. Now, not only that, I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of rumors about us running out of munitions. But if you got a longer memory, you remember probably about, I think 6 months ago, I told you that they were going to uptick the production of those munitions about 10 times. And I even pointed out, because, usually they say we're going to double our efforts, but they said 10 times the efforts. That means right now, somewhere, lots of stuff is getting made right now. Lots of bombs, lots of kinetic warfare is being created. And I think this is a fake out to America's enemies and to the public, making them think that, don't worry, the war's going to be over soon. They're running out of missiles. We got to save our missiles. We'll pull back. No. We're building plenty of them.
Oh, wait, and not to mention, too, the excuse for the wartime footing of the conversion of our auto industries and all those fabrication plants over into military use. So, how can they convince you that we need to turn our automotive industry into a weapons manufacturing industry?
I remember already a couple articles that I mentioned that is the course of the Trump administration, and those talks were already in the works to change over the auto manufacturers to build wartime supplies. So that's already in the works, right? And you're like, well, how could that go wrong? Well, the Federal Communications Commission scrapped limit on broadcast TV ownership, which means there'll be even more of a streamlining of the AI media companies and the television broadcasters. So you're going to get more and more of a unified message coming out of the ministries of truth around the world. Right?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing. These administrations are supposed to be stopping this conglomeration of these large businesses into literally a single monopoly, but it's the opposite. They're all becoming single monopolies now. Again, the power of control of manufacturing and resources in the hands of government itself. That brings us right back to communism.
Right. So the more and more that these Marxist Leninist groups get more credibility and the governments give them more credibility, then that gives the governments around the world more excuses to do military operations and clandestine operations like this one. U.S. intelligence asset said to descend on Cuba because, like I said, we are going to invade that thing. We've been slowly trying to take it over using the power outages and the famines. Sound familiar? Same thing's going on in Puerto Rico, ironically, but that's supposedly within the U.S. territories. You got the CIA setting up task force to pressure Havana, right? Because we want them to switch over. And let's get into how it circles around to this AI kind of thing. You're seeing more and more of these headlines, like I predicted, that the commercial sector of business would get control over the airwaves, and that the only way that they, not the airwaves, but the airways and the airwaves, right? So both the communications and literally the three-dimensional space above your head. DoorDash wins federal appeal to fly its own delivery drones. So that's going to be happening more and more, and that's going to be more and more of an excuse to have this full AI takeover of all traffic on the ground and in the air. So all of these predictions are coming true.
And then let me ask you a question, though. So DoorDash rolls over my property and drops, or its drone crashes in and then burns down my house. I mean, who's responsible for that?
You'll probably, get some insurance, kind of like an auto insurance, where you don't really fully get restitution.
No, but DoorDash should be totally responsible. It was their drone that caused the accident.
Right, but you'll have to deal with their insurance company that is going to fight you and not want to pay out what you deserve. That's just like any other industry when they have insurance companies involved. Whether it's the police doing something bad, they got their own insurance that'll take care of that, right? That you said, what's that event? What's that singular event? There might not be a singular event. There just might be an avalanche of these little events that allow them to just paint a picture for the world that is too dangerous for this or that or the other thing. And that's the reason you're not getting deliveries. That's the reason your freedoms are limited. And then,
Well, that's another whole reason to put AI in charge of everything. So what you just described in the latter there does not happen. Just put it all in charge of everything. That way
right.
there'll be no problems.
Customs, all of it. Right.
Yeah. Put it all under control of AI.
Certain towns are buying robots, and sheriff's offices are buying drones and robots. It's happening. It's just the way that this technological system would roll out. They're going to put things on the ground. There's a thing called the flea that the U.S. military has that can jump up a whole story, land on the roof, roll around in your house, and then leave. And no one will even know it was there. So there's got to be some kind of way to live both lives, one part with one foot in and one foot out of the technocratic system.
China and Russia and gasoline exports. So Russia's extending all the gasoline ban until the end of January. And this will include all diesels as well. So Europe's not going to get what they need for the entire year. It's going to get chilly and they're not going to have what they need. So, where does that take them for the year? And as I was talking about on the beginning of the show here, off of the street interview, Shell CEO blunt message, gas and diesel face a new squeeze, refiners moving over to the jet fuels. So we're going to get squeezed because the profits of these companies come first, and you having shortages or inflation comes second. It's all about getting the most money they can for the shareholders. It's always been, they're an entity. They're first, you're always second. And then another thing here with this was a really interesting one that I found. Again, Russia, when you showed all those locusts coming across, Russia reaps what it sows. A shortage now hits food. Well, it's not just food in Russia, it's food globally. Just like Ukraine is not supplying down into Africa any longer. Remember Ukraine, Ukraine used to supply 30 million tons of grain. Now they're down to like 5 or so. This year, I think it's going to be less because they had so much more destruction of their main industries, and they've really been hit, even major cities, and all the men have been thrust into the front meat grinder, and farmers are forced to trade fuel with each other even to get what they need to get these harvests in. And we got the locusts, which you just showed. Do the numbers from Russia. If those decline to a point, that would entail a famine anyway, just from Russia not exporting. And then China, they're in a world of hurt for grains. We in America are at 100-year lows, but the world's going to be really lean on food. Just a lot of mechanics, a lot of things are moving. This comes from the Shell CEO and talking about specifically the refineries are now prioritizing products in jet fuel. So there's going to be a shortage worsening and the supply pipeline narrows without that many people noticing it because they're going to move their production shift. Let me see if I can find them. Yeah, here it is. This is the actual beginning of the article. Shell CEO Wael Swan. Diesel retail prices in the U.S. are being kept artificially low because we're coming into the midterms. Like gasoline and diesel right now, as you know it, are really artificially being suppressed. But wait until after the midterms, they're going to run. They want to keep it low for the midterms. And after that, election's over, the real price is going to start to hit you, along with the real price of the grains and the real price of your plastics and the real price of everything is going to hit all in once. Like you talked about people, not getting a bill every month and maybe waiting to pay it all at the same time. Well, this is going to be the same thing. Like all 3 or 4 of these things are going to hit us in the exact same moments. And then here's another one. Shell itself announced, I was telling you that it's going to reduce capacity to 93%. I've heard as low as 90, 93, so that's right in the ballpark there for the third quarter planned maintenance, which means as we beg for more fuel, there will just be less fuel. And here's another one for us on diesel. Again, Shelley's CEO, diesel's in short supply, but behind the scenes, you wouldn't know it because of artificial suppression of prices. We're exporting diesel over to Europe, but at the same price, our diesel keeps creeping up. And these same people on these articles here are predicting $10 a gallon diesel by the end of the year. So hopefully our harvest would have been in by then, but then that hits the trucking industry and all things run on diesel for supply chain. Containers, the reefers, these sort of thing, they run on diesel to keep the refrigerated movement of goods. As you can see, all these things are going to start to hit us after the midterms are over. Like all the politicians are keeping everything artificially low for us to get their vote. But once that's done and they no longer need you, they're just going to let it run. And 2027 is going to be a very inflationary year because, November elections are going to be done. That's it. And then things run on the price they're supposed to be, not on what's suppressed. Most 401ks and parents and that sort of generation retiring are in 401k. So if that is wiped out or declines 50%, like if you're retiring now and your 401k gets whacked by 50% because the stock market collapses that much, I mean, you're not going to start over and wait 20 years for it to come back to even again before break even. You're going to be crying is basically what you're going to be. And they keep talking about this again and again. If this type of event occurs, everybody who's ready to retire that's been saving their whole life for this moment gets 50% haircut on everything they've saved and worked for. And that would happen in a scenario like that. And hey, it's just a free market. Just a free market. Oh, well, we couldn't exit our positions. Oh, the allocation for the fund had to take the top 50 S&P top performers. Well, that's a law. They're going to have all these excuses.
You brought up a couple of weeks ago about unrealized gains, right?
So, yeah, unrealized capital gains.
Right. And so they're trying to push that in all kinds of these left-leaning states like Colorado and Washington and different places. They're trying to do that where they'll tax people out of existence till they move off all of the best land. So this article is talking about corporate America got billions of dollars in tariff refunds. Where's your cut? You don't get a cut. Remember, they floated for a little while the idea that you would get some kind of tariff rebate check. But unfortunately, the way that they set up the tariff laws is only those directly involved with having to pay tariffs get refunded, right? So if you look down here in their article.
No, but I would disagree. Like we all paid more because all those companies charged more because they had higher tariffs. They just passed the cost on to us. And everybody paid an extra 5 to 10% for all those goods for multiple months.
Right. And then we're not going to get that money back. That's kind of what I was talking about here. Apple got 2.2 billion. Amazon got 600 million. Nike got 300 million. Consumers, they didn't get nothing back, just higher prices. And then when you go down here, right here, it says in total, the government is on the hook to refund hundreds of thousands of importers, a total of around 166 billion. A little more than half of that has already been paid out, meaning they already got their money, according to Customs and Border Protection court filings. The levies cost households $1,000 on average last year, according to the Tax Foundation. Before the Supreme Court weighed in, the Trump administration was floating that idea like I was talking about a $2,000 tariff rebate check, but too bad. The tariff refund system is structured only that parties who directly paid tariffs or the customs brokers acting on their behalf can file for a refund. In other words, you're not going to get that. Maybe you can go get some jobless benefits. I thought we'd talk about some of these, the world's most indebted households. Some of these slides you sent me were pretty interesting here.
Yeah, well, you look at it, and the way our media is portraying it is we in America are living off credit card debt. Everybody's like, $50,000 in debt. We got it the worst ever on the planet. That's for us, for our newsfeed, to convince you that your life is not going anywhere and your economy sucks and everything. Like I'm starting to find that all this regional news that I keep surfing through is like a copy paste for the individual audience. So they change the numbers and they change the economic figures to make it fit, because they never compare anywhere around the world except pretty much where you are. So I found this one really interesting because it does compare apples to apples. And it's not filtered through the media to just go to the local audience. And the Malaysian ringgit is down. It's the terriblest economy, worst economy in Malaysian history. Oh my gosh, why? Well, you need to smuggle stuff over to Singapore to make a living. These kind of things, right? All regional. So who has the highest debt on the planet? They keep saying, America, you're living without your means, living outside your means. Actually, it's Switzerland.
Ain't
Household
that
debt.
ain't that one of those nice socialist, semi-socialist nations?
Yeah, it sure is. They're trying to limit the population. Wait, you're not a good global citizen. You're trying to limit the migrants coming in, dude.
Wait a minute. Isn't Switzerland, Luxembourg, Norway, Australia, Denmark, Netherlands all basically those ones that are semi-socialist?
Yep, private nations, pretty much. Like Luxembourg and Switzerland, you have to almost be born there, and Monaco as well. You almost have to be born there,
Free
partake in that.
healthcare. They got the free healthcare you could wait forever on.
I would throw Monaco in there too, but I didn't see Monaco on that list. Although I'm very fascinated with Monaco. I definitely want to go there and take a trip.
Adult obesity around the world.
If you can't eat and food's expensive, and this obesity chart, that'd be really interesting to hold this one, and then we'll compare it in 5 years to see where the famines went first, and then how thin people got because food got expensive, and their food choices changed, and they had to cook more home cooked foods. And I can't believe 42% of all Americans are like obese.
What are they doing in Kuwait? I thought if you lived out there in 120, you should be thin.
They use a lot of palm oil for cooking. They use a lot of real heavy oils for cooking. And I noticed that, and especially, like India too. That's another nation that just like saturate. Damn, dude, you get a dish and you got like a ½ inch of oil floating on the top of it every time you get it. It's just so much oil used, like so much more than anybody could consume and burn through. I could see why.
I thought that we would be worse. I thought it would be like, worse. But, we are one of the few red countries there, but at least we're not like at the top, like French Polynesia. We're down at 42%. So only 42% of us are fat and out of shape.
But when you look at those pictures from like the 1930s, they were cooking with the same exact stuff. And everybody was skinny and running around. And there were, look at pictures of India, look at pictures of Polynesia, whatever. Everybody was skinny, running around. I don't know what it is, what happened. The same exact, they were using the same coconut oils. They were using the same seed oil. They were using the same oils, press oils, rapeseed oil, whatever, for cooking. How is it so different today that everybody's so fat when they were using the exact same thing, but they weren't fat like 100 years ago?
Well, I don't know, but I know that 12% of our country is diabetic on top of that.
Hey, so this Google thing, this is another really interesting one. They keep trying to play us off of the Chinese AI models, the US and European, Western AI models. It's not about that. It's about you getting to accept AI, that we need to win the AI race. So we need to build it out as fast as we can with no interruption, as fast as we can to win the AI race. But they're telling everybody in Asia the same exact thing. We got to win over here. We got to build it faster than the Americans and the Western people. What does that lead to? A complete build out as fast as it can with no opposition of something that most people oppose and are realizing we should have opposed this thing from the beginning. The reason that chart's negative is they're spending so much to compete with the AIs that are in Asia that the additional cash flow that they used to have is now being used to buoy up their, usage and let's say cost to compete with those. So they're losing money to compete with the AI models here in Asia, which run 25 times cheaper with the same result or even better on some of the newer. And, there's a new one popping out every other day over here. So that Google is the first time it ever, and the reason it is because they're spending so much to try to compete with AI. But see, in the beginning, we priced into the market like, oh yeah, all these companies are going to pay us on the subscription model, but they didn't. They're like, well, we can use the other one over there for either free or 25 times less. We actually don't need yours, thanks. That's the reason Google's negative for the first quarter ever in recorded history, ever. But the point I'm coming at is it keeps just bringing us back to the saturation of AI. And, it's not about should it be or shouldn't it be. It's like the arms race, the AI race, the AI race in Asia too. So the whole planet's being covered in this while we argue whose is better and we got to stay ahead of the others. And that's the whole plan. This is a new system that's being put in place to control humanity. And if you can't see that for what it is, you ain't looking close enough.
And you can't just start doing what they used to do to hide stuff. You think about Soviet Russia and you think about, the Great Leap Forward. All these places had these things where people would hide between the walls, where they would dig tunnels. Even the Vietnamese fought back against the Americans by digging those tunnels. Not anymore. Ground penetrating radar, LiDAR, And these other scanning, there's nowhere left to hide, man, unless you're going to figure out how to live in the deep ocean.
Yeah, granite might be the only blocker of that, like a deeper granite tunnel system. Yeah, imagine the stuff they're finding too, like ancient archaeological cities and ruins and things that we didn't know were there that are out being discovered and dug on without in a very low key way. Hey, we found something out in the middle of Chad and southern Chad, doesn't make the news, and they send teams out there. Oh, wait, by the way, it was the the resting place of this ancient relic that we've been looking for, from Nebuchadnezzar, used in his own hands to whatever in some mythical battle. And that was the power tool they were looking for, an energetic, some sort of spiritual energetic tools that combining them together unlocked it. This is what they're searching for. It's almost like Hitler used to run around the globe looking for all that stuff in the war. That's what Indiana Jones is kind of loosely based on, was Hitler running around with those guys looking for all the, occult objects. But we still do that, man. That's part of it. That's part of it. Everybody's looking for the ancient stuff because there's something with that energetics in it.
I forgot about this little 22-second video you sent me before we log off here we could play.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Remember, civilizationcycle.com. Throw your email in there. We'll get you the show notes, and also buymeacoffee.com/civilization. If you liked our content, we're going to wrap it up here and let you, in service of the AI, my friends, this is the future they have planned for us. Thanks for joining. I hope you got something out of the video. Please support us. Buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle if you like information like this. That link's in the description box below. If you're excited to start your garden this year with real, authentic, heirloom and organic seeds, to check out trueleafmarket.com. You won't regret it. Happy planting, and thank you for supporting the channel and this broadcast. Click the link in the description box below. And if you would like to be a guest on the Civilization Cycle podcast, or would like to suggest a guest to join us here on the Civilization Cycle podcast, send us a message at civilizationcyclepodcast@protonmail.com. And visit us at civilizationcycle.com to sign up for the weekly show notes for the live show every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. 10 bullet points so you can keep the conversation going with others, and keywords so you can do some of your own research. civilizationcycle.com. We'll see you next show. Bye for now.